Welcome to this webinar hosted by Earned. Today we'll be learning the financial secrets from Physician Multi-Millionaires. Today's agenda involves 3 topics. First, I'll be talking about the roadblocks to retiring with $5 million. Next, I'll be focusing on 3 strategies to increase your odds of amassing $5 million or more, and I'll be doing so by highlighting 3 physicians and their stories. And finally, I'll wrap up with a case study that brings these concepts all together in a way that hopefully you can understand and put into motion. I'm Bill Martin, the Chief Wealth Officer of Earned. Earned is a wealth management practice that specializes in working exclusively with physicians with a comprehensive offering to help physicians accomplish their wealth management goals. As physicians, each one of you has something on your back, even though you might not realize it. What is this? It is a target. I'm sure you've known plenty of stories where your physician friends and peers have fallen prey to really bad advice. It's unfortunate, though. It's not easy to distinguish between good financial opportunities and bad ones. I have a story I'd like to share that kind of illustrates this concept. A physician I know was a practice owner, and his team sold to a private equity group. They became flush with cash, and this physician was pitched investing in Baskin-Robbins, and not just a single store, but multiple stores throughout a region. His belief was, why everyone loves ice cream. So, how did this turn out? In March of this year, not only did he have to close one store, but all of his stores were shut down. What ended up happening? He lost much of the wealth that he had amassed over the entire amount of his career. This story does not have to be your story. As a physician, you can create a financial legacy with the right plan and the right strategies in place. I offer this first piece of advice, and that is to consider mapping out where you are and where you want to go. I think of this as your financial blueprint. What this entails is knowing what you need to attain that future lifestyle you desire, which might be retiring with $5 million or more. Now, let's take a look at 3 physicians that have achieved this particular outcome. And besides creating a financial plan, something that all 3 did, what specific steps did they take to realize this outcome? Physician 1, named Dr. Arstair, his key strategy for amassing $5 million was to maximize his savings. His motto, it's not what you earn, it's what you save that counts. On the left, you see 3 different concepts. These are concepts that Dr. Arstair applied to his financial life. The first was a 50-30-20 rule. What this rule entails is taking your money and your savings and your earnings after tax and dividing them among 3 different concepts. First is your basic needs. 50% is allocated to that. 30% are discretionary expenses, things that you think that would be nice to have but are not must-haves in your life. But what that leaves, in a really important concept, is 20%, if not more, left over to begin to build your wealth. This was a key principle to what Dr. Arstair did. He realized when he came out of training, and each year thereafter, if he spent every single dollar, there wouldn't be anything left over to be able to grow his wealth. In these savings that he was able to put aside, he understood the importance of putting them into multiple savings buckets. Let me talk about the 3 main ones that are here. First is taxable, second tax deferred, and third is tax-free. The taxable bucket is those dollars that are not put aside for retirement and retirement accounts that are extra savings that you can put and begin to grow in multiple different ways. The tax deferred bucket is often associated with a retirement account. This is where you put in dollars pre-tax that grow tax-free, but when pulled out, the taxes will have to be paid in the future. And the third bucket is what's called this tax-free bucket. Here, these are dollars that are put in where taxes have already been paid into a retirement account, but the earnings grow tax-free, and once those dollars in these accounts are pulled out, they're not taxed again. Dr. Astaire understood the importance of saving not only in one of these buckets, but in all three. This provided him a lot more flexibility on how he sourced his income, how that income is taxed, as he moved throughout his career and thinks about transitioning into retirement. The third idea involves Roth strategies, and this is building out that tax-free bucket. Dr. Astaire knew that as a high-income earning physician, that he was going to be precluded from directly investing in Roth IRAs. But the concept of a backdoor Roth, a very legal, often used strategy by physicians to contribute to this tax-free bucket, is something that Dr. Astaire did with a lot of discipline and consistency. Not only that, he knew there was another way to continue building this tax-free bucket. And that is, once he was transitioning into retirement, his income falls lower and his tax brackets go into a much lower tax bracket, he could apply a concept called Roth conversions. And that's taking these tax-deferred dollars, transitioning them to Roths through a conversion, and now allowing those dollars to grow both tax-free and can be withdrawn on a tax-free basis later on. By applying these three concepts, really being intentional about saving, understanding these different savings buckets, and taking advantage of these Roth strategies was the way that Dr. Astaire was able to accomplish and amass $5 million. Let's take a look at Physician 2. Her name is Dr. Scheer, and her key strategy for amassing, in her case, $7 million, was to minimize taxes. Her quote, it says, "It's not really what you save, but what you keep net of taxes that ultimately counts." This was the approach that she applied throughout her financial journey as a physician. She understood how various types of income are taxed, whether that's W-2, 1099, partnerships, capital gains, etc. Educated herself on that and found ways, which is the second concept, to maximize income in the areas where it's taxed the least. Now, W-2 income, for example, as an employee, probably has the least amount of options, but there's still things that she knew could be taken advantage of in that kind of setting. Setting aside for retirement plans, for example, maybe taking advantage of an HSA. But through moonlighting and other opportunities, earn 1099 income, which creates many more opportunities for tax savings. And then over time, she realized as her wealth grew, the capital gains and long-term gains that can come from building a portfolio is a great way and a much lower way of which income is taxed, and was very strategic about the design and how her income is earned over time. And lastly, she was very smart about maximizing deductions, taking full advantage of credits that are available, and contributing the most that she can to retirement plans. In her case, she had access to a 401k, but she also had access to a 457B plan. And in this case, she was able to maximize savings in both. You could contribute to both of those types of plans. She understood the tax ramifications, understood the tax code, and was able to maximize the after-tax wealth by taking advantage of each of these three strategies. Physician 3, his name, Dr. Diligent, and his key strategy for amassing $9 million was to invest like the pros. His motto, in the long run, it's not just how much money you make that will determine your future prosperity. It's how much of that money you put to work by saving it and investing it. There's 4 concepts on the left that I'll walk through. First is Dr. Diligent understood the importance of avoiding chasing alluring stories and also becoming an investment collector. Let me take that first phrase, avoid chasing alluring stories. So like the example that I shared from the very beginning of the Baskin-Robbins physician investor That was a compelling story when he first heard it. But as you saw and as you heard me kind of explain, it didn't turn out so well. I encourage you, if something sounds too good to be true, it often is. Avoid chasing these kind of stories. And the second part of this first concept is don't become an investment collector. I see this all the time in physicians. And what do I mean? You get pitched one idea, then you get pitched another idea, and maybe you don't go all in each one, but you're like, those sound really good. And you start investing in these different types of strategies. The problem is there's no rhyme or reason to the design of your portfolio. And the second point is what Dr. Diligent realized connected to this first, is it's really important to design your portfolio with purpose and to align that to your long-term goals. In other words, this is investing like the pros do. Part of that entailed a tax-efficient core. I'll explain more about that in just a minute. And the second concept is understanding around that core, it's important to have return-enhancing satellite strategies. Let's take a closer look. How did he, Dr. Diligent, get to the $9 million? Did this through custom indexing, tax loss harvesting, and private investing. Let me take a closer look at custom indexing first. Custom indexing allows you to own the individual securities typically bundled in a mutual fund or an ETF. Funds and ETFs are pooled vehicles. This means the securities inside them that might be tracking an index are like they're locked in a safe. You can't get access to the underlying constituent parts. But in a custom index, it's as if that safe is opened wide and you now have access to the underlying securities that make up that particular index. Well, why is that important? As you see here, custom indexing provides far more flexibility and tax advantages compared to funds and ETFs. They're all professionally managed. In the case of ETFs and custom indexing, low fees and transparency is important in both ETFs and custom indexing. But then as you go down further, you see there's the opportunity in custom indexing for personalization, for things like investing in ESG or SRI, environmental and social governance type strategies, and employing those restrictions in a customized way in your portfolio. Really important, though, is the tax advantages, including tax loss harvesting and tax transitioning. What is tax loss harvesting? Custom indexing, when coupled with technology, does allow you to systematically capture the benefits from selling securities at a loss. And you can do this even when the index is up. And why is that? It goes back to the concept of custom indexing allows you to get access to the underlying securities in the indexes that you're trying to track. As illustrated in this chart, the market, let's take the S&P 500, is often up 70% of the time. It ends up the end of the year having appreciated. The challenge is it's hard to do tax loss harvesting in a case where you're investing only in the pooled vehicle. But with owning the underlying constituent parts of that index, this allows you to take advantage when those securities happen to be down, even when the index as a whole is up. Let me give you a quick example. In 2020, that's the year that we probably all would like to forget as it relates to COVID revealing itself worldwide. And as the shutdowns occurred and the lockdowns occurred, the market in March, April, and May took a nosedive. Well, those investors that waited to the end of the year, maybe investing only in funds and ETFs, the market was up over 20%. Unbelievable. Who would have thought in the midst of those early days of COVID that would have been the case? But through custom indexing and automated tax loss harvesting using securities, there was the opportunity early on to generate a lot of tax losses. And while still tracking that index, it's a great opportunity to earn after-tax wealth and after-tax savings. And the reason why, by taking this strategy, it creates a bank of losses that can be tapped into until they're fully utilized. It doesn't have to be in the year that they were those losses incurred. It could be for future years as well. Well, what can those bank of losses do? A couple of things. One is they can offset gains in your investing account. But in addition to that, they can also offset gains in non-investment accounts. For example, in real estate or a practice sale where there's capital gains associated with that. Let's take a look at what this could mean. Starting with $1 million of investable assets, tax-smart investing portfolios can earn more than $3 million incrementally over a 30-year period. So in this chart on the right, this shows over 10, 20, and 30 years, investing in the same index. The first one is taking this and not applying the tax strategies. And the second darker green bars represents applying the type of strategies that we've talked about. And so on an after-tax basis, you can see this wealth grows much more significantly over time by applying this kind of approach. This is exactly what Dr. Diligent did. And let's take a closer look at an additional strategy of investing in private investments. The largest 185,000 companies in the US, this is a chart, this donut chart represents that. There's a little tiny sliver. What's that represent? That's publicly traded companies, companies that you can go and invest in easily because they're on publicly traded exchanges. But as you can see, roughly 98% of this investing universe is locked up in private companies. Much more difficult to invest in. But you as a physician, particularly as a high income earning physician, have the opportunity to invest in private investments. There are certain statuses like accredited and qualified purchasers that must be met. But if you meet these, you can benefit from the well-diversified institutional grade private investments such as private equity, private real estate, and private debt. Let's take a look at private equity. These are returns from a broad-based private equity index that shows that they have exceeded public equity returns by 4.3% per year. The chart on the right converts this to show what that extra 4% or more a year is able to grow over time. And in the case with $1 million invested, after 10 and then 20 and 30 years, approximately $2.5 million of additional wealth is created by accessing these private investments, including private equity. So let's take a look at the value added for Dr. Diligent and what this could mean over a 15-year time frame. And in this case, just taking a look at starting with about $3 million, on the right, you can see the growth of without earned. And there is some nice growth there. Grows to roughly $6 million or so over time, starting with 3. So a doubling of the original investment. But with earned and with applying the strategies that I talked about, tax-smart investing and accessing private investments, collectively these strategies added nearly an additional $6 million of net worth for Dr. Diligent over this 15-year time frame. As I stated at the beginning, as physicians, you have the opportunity to create a financial legacy with the right plan and the right strategies in place. Earned is here to help, and as I stated at the beginning as well, we work exclusively with physicians. We begin by taking a look at what is your net worth today, what are your future goals, and then what are the gaps that are missing to be able to fully accomplish the financial goals that you want. We then take a look at what strategies can be used to close that gap. Things like we've talked about on this webinar, maximizing savings, minimizing taxes, and investing wisely. When you have this smart financial blueprint and you apply these strategies, the possibility of achieving financial independence increases exponentially. I wanted to close with this story, a story of two married physicians, the Kumar family. They met in med school and had a very similar story. Their parents both had immigrated from India, and they wanted to give their children the chance to obtain better career opportunities. Well, both of the Kumars worked incredibly hard through medical school and residency, began a life together, and they committed not to squander their parents' sacrifices. And the Kumars applied the principles outlined in this presentation. Early on, with the help of a financial planner, they developed a written financial plan, this blueprint. They decided, even though it was very tempting, to not overspend and began saving with discipline and diligence. They then found ways to minimize their tax burden. As a dual physician family, their income was taxed at a really high rate, but they applied smart strategies to minimize that tax burden. And lastly, they invested smartly, avoiding investing in strategies that sounded too good to be true, investing with discipline, and applying the principles we talked about in this webinar. What was the result? The Kumars are now in their 50s, and they have a net worth of over $10 million. But more importantly, they were able to give back to their parents that had sacrificed so much, helping to ensure their parents were living comfortably in retirement. Kumars also have provided their kids with excellent educations and the opportunity to experience the financial independence that they so desire for that next generation. I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this webinar. I encourage you to reach out to me. Feel free to text or call or email. My contact information is here. I'd love to get the chance to connect and share more with you about Earned. Thank you and have a great day.